Welcome back to Stay Home and Draw. The purpose of this, we've been calling it our show now. It's kind of like our show, is to encourage people to stay home during this crazy pandemic. I don't really know the difference between the two. Maybe I'll look that up after. Just so everybody can stay safe and we can stop the spread of the coronavirus, and also just to inject some creativity into your day and give you kind of a break from the everyday, and we can like kind of socially come together and chat a little bit as we're drawing. So thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited. Today we're going to be drawing a cute little trio of house plants, and we're going to be doing that using brushes from my Multi-Tonal Markers. And this is a brush set that I made, and it's very, very unique. It's probably unlike anything you probably used in Procreate, and it's got a little bit of a learning curve. They are a little weird. I'll admit, using the set is a little weird. But once you get the hang of it, you can do some really, really cool stuff with it. I actually have some pictures up of artwork that I've made, and these brushes, they create all these really cool tones, and there's this great texture to it, like this marker-like texture. So this is a piece that I made with them. Here's another piece. Some food art, which is one of my favorite subject matters. But yeah, they have these really cool, like realistic color effects that are very unique to this set. There's a cute little orange and rainbow, and a portrait that I did, which there's a few different types of brushes in this set. There's some that make cool like colors like this. There's also flat brushes, which just kind of have the edge texture. So I'm really excited to show you guys about this set, because it can be a little confusing if you just open it up and start using it. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go into Procreate and grab my pencil. I always put my plants too close. And we're going to create a new canvas. And the size I'm going to be using is 5500 by 4000 pixels. That's kind of like my favorite size because it's really high res and it's like the size of my iPad. But you can go lower resolution, especially if you have like an older or smaller iPad. You might not get as many, you won't get as many layers if you have a higher resolution. So feel free to go down to like 3000 pixels or something like that. All right. So we're going to start this drawing off with a sketch. We're going to be drawing 3 little house plants. And I'm going to be showing you some also really cool stuff with masks. We're going to be going into the 3 different types of masks that Procreate uses. So this will be a really good one for you if you're, confused about how to use masks and stuff like that. So let me just grab a pencil brush so we can do our sketch. So I'm grabbing one from my pencil box set called Bardot pencil, but you can use, a pencil brush from the Procreate sketching set is just fine. And then I always like to do my sketches in like a middle gray, so something like that. Okay, so we're gonna have 3 plants. So we're just gonna draw, let's start with the middle one. So kind of like a trapezoid shape.
Real quick, was it normal canvas size?
Yeah, it was 5,000 by 4,000. What did I say?
By 4,000, not 45?
45. Yeah. There you go. Oh no, 5,500 by 4,000 pixels is the canvas that I'm using today. 5,500 by, that is my normal size. But when it's a vertical one, I don't do it the same ratio. Anyways, I digress. Okay, so we're gonna draw 3 little pots kind of across the bottom here, like little trapezoid shapes. And okay, cool. There we go. We got our 3 little pots. I'm going to scooch this guy over a little bit using the selection and transform tools. Okay. And now we're going to draw the leaves and stuff. So on this one, I'm doing like a, what was it called? Philodendron, which is like the heart-shaped leaves. So I'm just going to draw my leaves. They're all going to kind of overlap a little. So these are kind of like heart shapes. Maybe we'll do one down here like that. And we'll do one right there that kind of overlaps. Sometimes it's easier to draw the stems first and then add the leaves. Sometimes it's easier just to draw the leaves. So whatever order works for you. I'm going to do the leaves first and add in the stems later. Maybe we'll have one going off over here. You just kind of want to like add leaves until it feels like a nice composition, I guess. Like there's some overlapping, that'll give it some nice dimension. And we can like figure out which ones are in front and which ones are in back. Like just by erasing this area here. What pencil? I'm gonna use the same brush to erase as I did to draw by tapping and holding the eraser, and I'll automatically select that same brush. So that one's in front. Maybe we'll have this one be in front of this, and maybe also in front of that one. There we go. So now we know what's in front and what's behind, because that is going to be important as we set up our layers and things like that. And then maybe we'll just imagine that where all the stems are going to be, you might not see the ends of them, maybe you will. That can always change. There we go, something like that. And now let's work on the middle one. For this one, I'm gonna do a snake plant, which is one of my favorite plants because they look really cool and they're really hard to kill. So I have quite a few of those in my house, but they kind of, they go up like this. And if you're drawing plants or anything really, it's a good idea to have a reference photo up. So if you're not sure exactly what they look like, this is a great thing to do. You can pull up your little dock down here, grab Safari, drag it off to the side, kind of resize it. And then you can draw, or you can write snake plant. Just so you're like, what exactly does a snake plant look like? And then you can pull up the image search and like see, oh, that's what it looks like. And then you have these references that you can go off at as you're working on your drawing. So I already kind of know what I'm doing here, so I'm just gonna scoot that over so we can have the full screen effect. And I'm just gonna draw some like different wavy, kind of tapered shapes. And then some are gonna go behind. Maybe this one goes behind a little bit like that. Just kind of like imagining where they go. And even when you're working off a reference, you can make stuff up. You don't have to like make it look exactly like your reference. That's kind of the idea anyways. Maybe we'll do one more here. There we go. Now we got a snake plant, and we'll add in all the details later, so I'm not gonna worry about too much about that right now. And then we're gonna do one more, and this one is gonna be kind of like a palm. Like there's these heart-shaped fan palms that have this really unique look to them. Maybe I can pull up a picture of them really quick. Heart shape fan palm. I think that's what they're called. Yeah, but anyways, they're like big and they have lots of lines coming off of them. They look really cool. So I'm gonna do like a stylized version of that. Like there, you can see how it looks. So I'm doing like a stylized version of that. It's not gonna look exactly like that, but that's what I love about art, is that you can kind of make your own choices about what you want it to look like. So maybe we'll do kind of like there. That's like the heart shape-ish. Then we'll have one going over here. And sometimes it's easier to start with a basic shape, like an oval, or like we can make it more circular and then make it pointy and then take this off instead of like just trying to draw the like pointed shape. You know, you can use these techniques to like start with basic shapes and then like add what you need to them. So something like that. And then of course you can like erase if it's easier. There we go. And let's do a couple back here. Something like that. And maybe one more right there. This is a very symmetrical composition. And then of course we got our leaves, or our stems. Okay. Cool. So that's looking pretty good. I just want to make sure these are all in the same line. So I'm just going to move this one down a little bit. So I'm using the selection tool, and then I select it, and then I'm going to grab the transform tool, which is a little arrow. And it just didn't look like they were all in the same line. If you ever want to check that, you can use the quick line feature to draw a straight line. So you can draw a line and then hold down and don't let go, and it'll make a straight line. And then put a finger down somewhere else, and then that'll make that line exactly horizontal. So I can hit edit even at the top and move it there. So I know they're all on the same line or not. So maybe I'll move those down a little bit. I don't really want that line in the drawing, but it helps to give me like a little guide so that I know if I need to move things down a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect anyways, so there we go. That's probably fine. Okay, so pretty happy with the sketch. So now I'm gonna move on to coloring. I like to check in with you guys to see if you have questions at certain points. So feel free to ask questions if you have any. I know Jeff's probably answering some in the chat. But do we have any questions that you wanted me to answer real quick about what we're doing?
Everyone's got really good about the screen size. Someone did ask about your pencil.
Oh yeah, probably about the sticker, right? That's a decal from D brand. And it's really cute. It just makes it look like a number 2 pencil. Anything I could do to add more color into my life, I will. So, the white was kind of boring and the pencil is just so cute. So, okay, cool. Well, we'll keep going.
And then,
one more question.
Someone was just asking what brushes they should be using right now. I was mentioning right now we could be using a sketching brush.
Yeah, anything you want to do a sketch, any pencil brush. I'm using, my pencil brush that I made in my pencil box set. But really anything just to help you lay out your sketch that looks pencil-ish, I guess. Okay, so we're gonna now move on to color. So I'm gonna reduce the opacity of the sketch by hitting N and then just dropping that down to about there, about 28%. And then I like to set my sketch layer to the multiply blend mode, and that just helps it so it's always like dark and visible because I keep it on as my top layer and I draw my art underneath it. So that just helps make it more visible. And then I'm gonna create a new layer and I'm gonna put it below the sketch layer. I'm always gonna keep that one on top. And now we're ready to start getting into the actual markers. So we're using, again, multi-tonal markers. And when you get this set, it actually comes in 3 sets. There's the flat markers, which don't have any color effects. And then there's the prismatic markers. Maybe I can kind of show you like what they look like real quick. Okay, so let me grab the flat marker. So the flat marker, it's just like a flat color with no, the color in the middle is flat. It does have the nice texture on the edges and stuff. And then the prismatic markers do some really crazy cool color effects. The more you like layer strokes on, it'll get darker and like more saturated. And these do some pretty wild things with color. And then there's also the authentic markers, and these are a little more subdued. They do like build up in intensity the more you layer on, but they're not like as crazy as these. But they have these really nice color effects. So those are the 3 different sets that come with this. And as you might have noticed, I didn't change my color when I did these 3 little swatches. This is the color I selected. Flat will always just be whatever color you selected. And then when I did these 2, as you can see, it's like way darker and like more intense. So that's one of the things that you do have to keep in mind when you're using these sets is the color that you select isn't going to be the color that you lay down when you actually draw with it. It'll be darker and more saturated. So you kind of have to compensate for that, but I promise you it is worth it, and you do get the hang of it pretty quickly once you like kind of get in the zone with using these markers. So I'll be showing you how to select colors and stuff. But I do want to mention also that this set comes with these really cool color palettes, which are a good jumping off point for colors. Like this one is specifically for use with the authentic markers, which is the brush I have selected now. And they're kind of like, you can imagine like you have a box of markers and these are some colors that are available to you, but of course you can customize it however you want. So I actually have that set up in my palette, and I might be pulling from this as we're working on this drawing. So if you don't know how to set your palette as default, you go to this palette section and then you find the palette that you want, like in your list. Someone's at my door. In your list, and then you can set it as default right there, and then it'll appear at the bottom. So I am choosing the one that I made for the authentic markers because I'm pretty much going to be using mostly that set for this drawing. All right, so let's clear this.
People are asking about are any brushes available built into Procreate that can do anything like this?
I would say no, not anything with these like cool color effects. I mean, you might be able to get the texture and you can like layer colors to, you know, get something similar, but these are made for a very specific purpose, which is doing this kind of style of art. So there's not really anything that I have found that's built into Procreate. But if you don't have this set, like, don't worry, like you can still follow along and it just will not look as dimensional. Like you could just use more like flat color and add your own texture and shading in later. But you'll still get the idea of like drawing the plants and the shapes and learning about layers and masks and things like that. So still follow along if you don't have this set. But for those that do, this will be good for you to see. So let me clear out this layer. If I just take 3 fingers and swipe them like this on the screen, that'll clear out my layer. So that's a good little shortcut. And I'm gonna start by doing all the little pots. So I'm gonna do like a yellow one over here. So I'm gonna start with this yellow from my swatches. And I usually always do, again, the brush I'm using is from the Authentic Markers. And I'm using just the Bardot marker. It's the first one in that set. And play around with the brush size because that definitely does affect the look of it. And just lay down a little color and just check and see if that's the color that you want. And for me, I think I want it to be a little warmer. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. And here's where the like adjusting colors part comes in. I really like to use the value sliders when I'm working with this set. So that's the one over here that says value, and you get all these little sliders. It's a lot easier to make like fine adjustments to colors using these than it is to do it with the disc. So this will also get you familiar with kind of making fine adjustments to your colors. So if I want it to be warmer, I could adjust the hue here, going back and forth. But sometimes I think it's easier to use these RGB sliders. So I'm just gonna go just a little bit this way, you know, closer towards red to make it warmer. And I think that's actually perfect. Like I like that kind of with the like orange undertones. So here's what I'm gonna do to paint in this. I'm actually just gonna go over the whole thing like this, back and forth. And I'm going farther than the actual shape of the pot because I'm gonna go back and erase away stuff. There we go. And the more that I lay strokes down, the darker, like if I keep going really a lot right there, it'll get really dark. And that's kind of how you can get these cool like effects. So that's what I'm gonna do there. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and erase away what I don't need. So I'm gonna get my eraser. I'm gonna go to the Authentic Markers. I'm actually gonna use a different brush for the eraser. We'll do the Detail Marker. I think that's the one I wanna use. So I'm in the Authentic Markers. I'm choosing the Detail Marker to do all my erasing. It has some nice clean edges. Just get rid of all that. Maybe make my brush a little bigger. There we go. And so this is how I'm gonna make the actual shape of the pot, is just by erasing this away. There we go. And the bottom as well. Maybe I'll make this one a little styly. I'll add a little taper or something right there at the bottom. As we do our little pots, we can make each one look a little different. Cool, so there, I've got my kind of yellowish orange pot. I'm gonna go ahead and move on and do this one as like, maybe like a reddish orange. So I can either start with the red and kind of scooch it over here a little bit more towards orange in this value slider. And that's a little too dark, so actually maybe I'll saturate it a little bit more. So this is saturation, that'll make it more saturated. Maybe it's just not orangey enough for me. So you can kind of like play around and see how you want to get it. I'm going to take it had like 98% brightness, and I'm going to just make it 100% brightness. That'll take all the like, anything that makes it look kind of dull and black, which is how I'm starting to get it. There, I like that. So you kind of play around and adjust the colors until you get what you want. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing and draw some marks until it looks like I want it to, which I think that looks pretty good. So that's what I'm gonna do for that one. And then I'm gonna grab my eraser again and erase away. This one will be like a little curvy pot. There we go. I'll take a little bit off the top there. All right, so we've got pot number 2 done, and we'll move on to pot number 3. And for this one, I want to do like a teal. So I'm going to just start with this teal swatch that I have saved right here under my palettes. I mean, that looks pretty good already, so I think I'm just going to use that without adjusting it. There we go. Cool. Okay, and then I'll, again, erase away. Maybe this one will just be like a straight shape instead of rounded or whatever. Oops. There we go. All right. I just want to check in with you guys and make sure everybody's following along. I know the colors, picking the colors can be a little weird. So do we have any questions that people are asking about any like color selection techniques or anything like that? Or are we doing okay?
So I was asking about how to get the shape of the brush. Someone was just asking.
I think what you mean is like how I have a little, that probably.
Oh, the indicator? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, I like having that. It's not on by default, but I really like having that feature because it helps me see what I'm doing. If you go to the Actions menu, Preferences, you just turn on where it says Brush Cursor, and you'll get that outline of your actual brush shape. So I think that's what you're asking about, and it is a really handy feature. Okay, so we got our pots done. So now we're gonna start on this guy, and we're gonna add in our leaves and everything like that. So I'm gonna create a new layer. I'm gonna keep those pots, they're all on one layer. And now I'm creating another layer, and we're gonna start with a green. And these are gonna be like kind of like a two-tone look to them. So I think that's pretty good already. I might go a little, oops, I didn't mean to do that. A little more yellow, just a little bit. Yeah. And maybe a little smaller with my brush size. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do for these. They're gonna be in 2 parts. Half the leaf's gonna be on one layer and half the leaf is gonna be on another layer. So stick with me here.
And real quick,
yeah.
Which brush are we on?
I am still using the Bardot marker from the Authentic Markers set. So this is part of the Multi-Tonal Markers. Let me drink a little water. I'll show you how to do this. Okay, so we're gonna be making, so plants like have like little lines in them. So we're gonna, and you can make lots of cool like line type, marks, I guess, using the set. Like that's really cool about it. So that's what we're gonna do with this. We're gonna make them go which direction? Forget. So we're gonna do it, it's kind of like how we did the pot. We're just gonna do it bigger than we need it, going over the edges, and then we're gonna erase it away. Is that the direction I wanted? No, let me do that again. I wanted the lines to go this way. 1 second, and then I accidentally changed my color. Okay, there we go, this way. So I want all the lines to go that way. So bigger than we need it, but this is only for half the leaf. So there we go. And then we're gonna get the eraser and just erase half of it there. And then also the shape of the like outside of it. There you go.
So someone was asking if this is all on the same layer right now.
We just started a new layer for the leaves. So we have the pots on one layer and we just started a new layer for the leaves. And I'm gonna put as many of these leaves on the same layer as I can, and which is fine as long as they're not like overlapping each other. That'll be important later. So let's do another one here. Since these 2 aren't touching, they can be on the same layer. It's no big deal. There we go. And then we'll erase away half of it. I'm kind of using the sketch as a guide. That's why having the sketch is really important. So we know like where we should be erasing and stuff. I'm gonna make the brush size a little smaller. If I make the brush size smaller, there'll be a little less texture where I erase. Let's do this one here. So we'll just, again, just making marks, kind of following that angle.
People are asking, why wouldn't we be using masks right now?
So I don't need to use masks yet. I will be using masks in the other one. I'm going to be using some clipping masks in this one later on. But I'll show you the reasons why you might choose to use a mask or not. Like basically if you want to have editing capabilities of your shape. I'll get into it. But right now, as long as we're doing it this way, and we know we're not going to go back and like need to change these shapes later, we can just use the eraser tool. Don't worry, I'll get there. All right, so let's do this one now. There we go, and I'll erase that away. Halfway, there we go. Oops, I need a little bit more. Here I gotta be careful because it's really close to that one. There we go. Okay, so I think I can still do this one. This one, actually I think I can still do that one too. Actually, I'm gonna put those two on another layer because I think when I do this other side of this leaf, I'm gonna want those behind it. So this will make a little bit more sense in a minute. So I'm gonna create a new layer for these leaves that are kind of behind the other leaves. So I'll create a new layer. I'm gonna put it behind the leaves, like the leaf sides that I just drew. And I'll do those now. There we go. Okay, and then we'll do this guy here. Perfect. Okay. All right, so we've done the left-hand side of each of these leaves, and now we're gonna do the right-hand side, and we're gonna put the right-hand side of the leaves on a separate layer. So I'm just gonna create a new layer. This one is between the two leaf layers, and we're gonna do the right-hand side of these 4 leaves that are on that layer. So now I need to get a little bit darker green so I can get that contrast between the two sides of the leaves. So I can just do like a very minor adjustment to the black and make it, or the brightness, and make it a little darker. And then I'll just test it out and see if it's dark enough, which I could probably go a teeny bit darker. And I might even go a little cooler, just a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna turn these off just so I don't get confused about which leaf I'm working on and what layer. So I just turn the other layer off real quick. All right, so now these are going, I still think I want it a little bit darker. It's not quite, I want to actually contrast to this. So I'm gonna go a little darker and a little cooler. That's a little better. Okay, so, and of course you can make it darker just by adding more strokes. Like if I kept going, it's gonna get really dark, which I don't want it that dark, but that's another way that you can do it. And then now my sketch is getting a little hard to see, so I might just bring the opacity of that up a little bit more so I can see that guide, use that as a guide. There we go.
So I was just asking, after doing the other side, should you keep it in both layers or can you merge them?
I wouldn't merge anything until you have to. So like if you're running out of layers, then go ahead and do it, decide. But you might decide you want to change up your art later. So it's good to kind of keep things on separate layers until you're sure, until you have to. I'm indecisive like that, I guess. So I like to have the option to just have it on another layer in case there's something I wanted to change about it. But definitely don't merge yet because we're going to do some other stuff to it. I kind of got a little, there we go. All right, let's do this guy down here. And we'll erase that away. Let me know if we have any more questions. I'm happy to answer all your questions, you guys. Okay, and one more over here.
And just a couple of people were asking, the other side of the leaf is on a new layer.
Yes, that's why when I'm drawing this, like it's hidden behind this leaf, like this side of it, because it's on a layer that's below the like left side of the leaf.
And it was actually asked a couple times, people were like, why are you drawing on the layer below, not the layer on top?
Well, one of the reasons, that's a good question, is because I already have this nice, on this layer, I have this nice hard edge that I made for this side of the leaf. And so if I put this one on top, I would have to like figure out exactly, you know, where to make it, like to divide it in half. But it's easier just to like have it cover, like have that line, and now it's covering the other side, and I don't have to figure that out. Hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So yeah. Okay, so I finished all 4 of those. So now I need to do the other side for these 2 leaves. So I'm just gonna create a new layer right below it. So I tap that one, and it always makes a layer above whatever layer you have selected. So there we go. And then I'll just do these real quick. There we go. And I'll do this one too, and then I'll erase them both. It's like the assembly line workflow, where you just do all of one thing all at once, and then you go back and do all of another thing all at once. There we go. Okay, so I've got all my leaves done. The next thing that I'm gonna do is just add a little bit of shading, like where the 2 overlap. And for this, I'm just gonna really quickly turn off my sketch, just because it's easier when I'm shading to see. And I can also see where I can probably clean up some like edges and things. You can always go back and do that later. These brushes do have some texture to them, so you don't get like perfect texture when you erase. Okay, so now we're gonna use Alpha Lock to add some shading to like just these 2 leaves that are behind. So I need to figure out what layer those are on, which is, there's 2 sides. I'll start with this one that has the like lighter green. So these 2 little pieces. I'm gonna turn on Alpha Lock, and you can do that by sliding with 2 fingers to the right, or you can tap it and tap Alpha Lock here. Just make sure it's checked, or that there's this little checkerboard pattern behind the picture. And then to add my shading, I'm going to choose a brush from the Authentic Markers called Fat Filler. I love this brush for adding some like smooth shading to my artwork. So Fat Filler, it's in the Authentic Markers. I'm not gonna change my color. Just like the brush that I was using, it'll get darker the more you layer strokes on each other. So I don't really need to pick a darker green, because I can, oh, that's huge. Let me go smaller with my brush size. So which layer was I on? Oh, I'm doing this one. So all I really need to do is just layer on some strokes like that, and it'll get darker the more strokes that I add. I hope that makes sense. And then I'm gonna go to this layer too, the one with the darker green, and turn on Alpha Lock on that. So swiping to the right with 2 fingers, and then I can do this side just a little darker, right underneath where it's under that. And I might actually make this side a little darker too, just to keep it darker than that. So, oh, and then right here too, I didn't see that one. So that's this layer with the light green leaves. And I'll just add a little bit of shadow right underneath there, just to get a little bit of dimension there. Cool. So now we've got a little bit of shading going on. The last thing we want to do is just add our stems. So I'm going to create one more layer for the stems below all the leaf layers. And for that, I will use, let's try the Detail Marker Fine. So we're still in the Authentic Markers. So Detail Marker Fine, let me see what color we have. Yeah, I like that color. So this one has a lot less texture and stuff, and it's kind of nice. So we'll just draw, I know I'm overlapping the pot, but we can move that to the correct layer. And maybe that one, you can't really see it. It's kind of coming back there. Maybe that one overlaps a little bit. There. So now we've got all our stems, and I'm gonna put this below the pot layer so that it goes behind the pot. And that's pretty much it for the first pot. So that's one way to use these brushes, is just using drawing, erasing, and then I showed you guys how to use clipping masks to kind of add a little bit of shadow to those shapes we've already made. And now I'm gonna move on to this one. So any questions about that before we move on to plant number 2? I think we're okay.
Is there, someone's just asking, is there a way to see the original color you used for the leaves because they change with every stroke added and get darker?
Yeah.
If you wanted to know the original color, can you?
That is a great question, really great question, which is something that is a little bit difficult when you're working with a set because you can't just like tap and hold it and then expect to get the same color. It'll be like darker than whatever color you are selecting. So the answer to that is no. And when you know you're going to be working with the color again and again and you want consistency, I usually recommend saving that color in a palette. So you can always create a palette, hit this plus, and it'll create like a brand new blank palette for you to save colors. Also, utilizing the history feature is sometimes helpful. I tend to like kind of eyeball it when I'm like selecting colors, or like I did here is I did all of one color at one time and then I moved on to the next color and I did all of that. So there's a few ways that you can kind of get around that, but if there's a color you know you're going to want to use again, I would save it in a palette. Okay, any other questions before we get back to it? Okay.
Someone was just asking, can you explain the shading with the brushes again?
Yeah, we'll get to do that some more, but basically I turn on clipping mask on that layer and I use the fat filler brush, which just darkens the more strokes you add, and I just added some strokes there until I got it as dark as I wanted it to be. But we'll get to do some more shading as we move on. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the snake plant now. I'm gonna use the Bardot marker again for this one. And let's just see what color we have right now. I think I'm gonna go a little bit lighter than that. So let's go up to the color picker. I'm gonna go to value, and I'm gonna take some of the, I'm gonna take the brightness up a bit. And maybe a little warmer than that. So I'll use this slider to go a little warmer. Maybe a little warmer than that. Go up a bunch. There, I think that's a nice color. So that's the color I'm gonna use. And I'm gonna go a little bit down with my brush size. And I'm just gonna draw in these shapes like that. And I'll come in and erase this area. Okay, just to kind of clean that up. And then I'll do this one as well. And with this plant, I'll be showing you guys a little bit about clipping masks. Okay. Make it pointy there at the top. Okay, so these two I'm gonna keep on one layer because everything else overlaps. So I'm gonna create another layer. Oh, look at me. Look what I did. I meant to have these on their own layer. So it's always good to check what layer you're on. I mean, not that it's that big a deal because these two things aren't touching. But if you accidentally put something on the same layer and you didn't mean to do that, you can grab your selection tool and just like draw a circle around it. And then if you swipe down with 3 fingers, you'll get the copy paste menu. And you can just use cut and paste. And that'll put it onto its own layer. So I'll just move it up there. Or actually, I do need it down there below the pot. So that's actually worked out well. And another thing you can do to organize, so if like it's starting to get to be a lot of layers, is you can group things. This is just an organization thing. So I can select all these layers by swiping to the right with them, and then I can choose group. And those are all for that like one plant. So my layers don't get so crazy and long and I have to scroll through and find the one I want. So that's another little tip. Okay, so the ones that are behind, we want to put on a new layer. And of course that layer needs to be below these because they're behind it. And then we'll do the same thing where we'll just kind of Draw that in like that. There we go. And we can do this one as well. And then I'll erase away, whoops, erase the top. I think, so I keep having to adjust my sketch because you want to be able to see what you're doing a little bit. So sometimes having the sketch very dark makes it hard to see like the actual shape of what you're doing. And then I guess I'm going to need one more layer for this last one. And this is where if you like start to run out of layers and you like know you're done with this plant, you're not going to make any more changes to it, you can start merging things together. I'm still okay at this resolution. So last one.
Which brush are you on? I'm sorry.
I'm using the Bardot marker from Authentic Markers, just the one at the top. And our last little guy here. There we go. And then erase just to make it pointier at the top. Okay, so now we've got all of our leaf shapes for these. I don't know if you call these leaves. They're so unusual. I love this plant. Okay, so we're gonna use alpha mask and clipping masks to add the detail to this. So we'll start with alpha lock. So I'm starting with the top layer and I'm just gonna swipe to the right with 2 fingers to turn on alpha lock. Again, you can also do that from the little menu that you get by tapping it. And that, I didn't explain what alpha lock is when I was doing this, but that makes it so you can't draw outside of the shape that you've already drawn. And a snake plant, I think we had that up earlier, has these really cool, I don't know, stripy variations in them, like that. So they have these like darker stripes going across, and then some of them have these lighter stripes on the side. So we're gonna be adding both of those details into this snake plant. Let me go back to Procreate. So first we'll start by adding, oops, that's my eraser. So I haven't changed my color yet because again, the more strokes you add, the darker it gets. And also this works with pressure. If you draw really lightly, it won't be that dark, but if you draw really heavy, you'll get a lot of darkness. So they're pressure sensitive as well. So I'm just gonna go in and add in, I might actually change my brush. I'm gonna try the detail marker because this one's a little more smaller and detail oriented. We'll see how that works. There we go, I like that a little better. And I'm just kind of like drawing in these little kind of stripy type patterns. Just kind of squiggling and kind of varying. It's not like a straight line, they're like kind of irregular. So I'm just adding those in. Again, I haven't changed my color. The darkness is just happening because that's what these brushes do. So I've done that one and now I'll do this guy too. And those are the only 2 leaves on this layer, if you want to call them a leaf, I don't know. There we go. So that's another good point is when you're working with these brushes, you want to start light and work towards darkness. And you can, which we'll do in a minute, add light over dark. You just have to create it on a new layer. So I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next layer. So again, swipe to the right to turn on alpha lock, 2 fingers, and then we'll add our little details to those. And if like these marks were already too dark, you're like, oh, that's just too dark and I can't really get it, I want it to be lighter. You can make the color less dark by adjusting it so that way that like progression in darkness isn't so intense, but I think it's working out well. And again, you can also vary your pressure of the brush to make it not so dark so fast.
And we're still on the same brush, we just changed colors?
We did actually change brushes for the details, for these like darker details. So we're in the detail marker now, which is like a smaller, like finer brush, which is great for details as the name suggests. And we didn't change the color. We're still using the same color we used to do the original green, but it just gets darker as the more you use it, the more you layer. All right, last one, alpha lock on, whoops, alpha lock on, and then we'll add in those little details and then we'll do the rest.
And why are we using Alpha Lock?
So the Alpha Lock makes it so that if I didn't have Alpha Lock on, it would draw, see, it goes outside the boundaries of the shape that I drew. So Alpha Lock is great when you want to add detail to a shape that you drew, which meaning like this long tapered shape, but you don't want to change the shape. You just want to add to that same shape. So I can draw like over here, nothing would happen. So that's why Alpha Lock is super handy. And I'm drawing on the same layer as well. That's important. Like if you have to use Alpha Lock, it's always on the same layer. And I'll show you some other ways to use masks that separate things out onto layers. So, okay, so we've got all our cool little details going on there. And I want to add like a lighter stripe to the sides of these. But the way these brushes work is that they darken. They always darken. So if I want to add a lighter color over the top, I need to put that on a layer on top of it. So that's what I'll do. So I'm going to start with these ones that are in front, and I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to set that layer to be a clipping mask. And so what the clipping mask does is kind of like Alpha Lock. Anything that I draw is going to be confined to this shape that I've already drawn. I can't draw over here. But the benefit of this is it's on a separate layer. So not only is it beneficial for us so we can add that lighter color, but you can like also, it remains completely editable. It's like I can't go back to this layer and erase these dark stripes. But if I put, something on a new layer and use a clipping mask, I can go back and erase things. I can adjust the blend modes. Like you have a lot more control over what you can do when you put stuff on a clipping mask, but you still have that ability to like keep it confined to that shape. So we're gonna go ahead and add the stripe. I'm gonna take out some of the black in this color. So really fine adjustments that you have to make. And that's like way too neon. So I will also take the saturation down quite a bit. So that's kind of where I'm at there. And we'll test it out and see. And that to me is still a little too saturated. So I'm gonna go even more. I might go a little more towards the yellow as well. Kind of getting there. Maybe I'll add just a teensy bit of black or, darkness. No, that's a little too dark. I think it just needs to be a little yellower. When I look at like a snake plant, the edges are like, pretty kind of a yellowish tinge to them. So let's go a little more towards yellow. Let's go do it this way. There we go. That's a little bit better. So let's try that. A little bit of black. I am kind of picky about colors sometimes. Okay, that's perfect to me.
Talking about color, someone was asking, how do you like to choose color normally in Procreate?
Like picking a palette or? How do I like?
Disc,
yes. Like 90% of the time I use the disc. I'm very comfortable using the disc. And then sometimes I use the value sliders if I need to get really precise, like when I'm using this set or something like that. So, but most of the time I just stick to the disc. But with this set, it is really helpful to like just make these little fine adjustments, which you can't, you can go, but you don't know you don't have as much control. So, yeah. So I don't know if you guys saw that, but as I was doing it, so I have this on a new layer and it's a clipping mask. And I can only draw on the same shape that I've drawn. So I can draw right along the edge and it's not gonna like add more color along the edge. It's gonna stay that same shape. Whereas if I didn't have clipping mask on, in fact, I can turn off clipping mask. That's not exactly what I want. So there we go. And I'll do this other one too. We're gonna do this to all our little plants. There we go. I missed it here. There we go. And then we're gonna do the same with this layer. So the one that's behind it, we'll have to do another layer and then we'll make that be a clipping mask. So now it's clipped to this second like leaf layer. And I can add those stripy detail.
It's been asked a couple times. Are these pressure sensitive brushes?
Yeah, for sure. Like, if you press, oh, I can't do it, but if you press heavier, they'll get bigger, and they'll also get a little darker too. So they're color and size sensitive when it comes to the pressure. Okay, which one? This one, I think. There we go.
Someone's just asking, I ran out of layers to use clipping masks.
Okay, if you ran out of layers, I know this is a very, like, this piece has a lot of layers. If you've run out of layers, you can go ahead and merge all your layers from this plant, like all the leaves, together, because we're not going to be going back and changing anything to that. So that's kind of, if you run out of layers, you got to decide, like, am I going to make more changes to these? Am I going to want to go back and add this different shading, or, you know, and for this piece, I already know we're not going to. That's a decision you have to make in your own work. So, but yeah, if you guys need to, you can merge those layers and you'll get more layers. So, okay, last one, this little guy in the back, clipping mask. Okay, perfect. All right, and now we can even add a little bit of shading using Alpha Lock, because I want to add some shading where these overlap. So we want to make sure we are on the right layers. So we'll start with, in fact, what I think I'll go ahead and do is I want to add shading, and I want it to affect this stripe, like the yellow stripe and the green part of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge these. Like I'm happy with it. I'm not going to need to make any more changes. Like erase, like if I'm like, oh, that's too big, I need to erase it. You know, I'm happy with it, okay? Like I'm good. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge this down. So I'm just gonna tap it and hit merge down. And now those two are on one layer, okay? And now Alpha Lock already is turned on from before. Like when I merged them, it kept Alpha Lock from when I had it turned on for the green layer. And I'm gonna choose my fat filler brush. And I'll just grab this green that I was using before and try it out. So I just want to add, no, that's too saturated. Am I in the right layer? Yes. I think I just need okay, so this color has almost no like black in it. It's almost completely bright. So I just need to have a little bit in it in order for it to like actually darken. It's not doing what I want to. I'm gonna take some of the saturation out. I think I need more dark. There we go. That's a little bit better. We can do a little bit here, maybe a little bit more black. Okay, cool. So I've got a little bit of shadow there. I'm gonna do the same for this one. So I'm gonna merge it. And Alpha Lock is turned on. I can see that because of the checkered board. I can also check it there.
So wait a second, but what if I want to unmerge?
You can't. That's why you got to be sure, you guys. Once you merge something, you can only undo. Like you can tap and undo it, or use this to undo it, but you can't like unmerge things. So if you be sure about it before you do it. Okay, so cool. We've got a little bit of shading detail happening on that one. It's looking pretty good. And I'm just going to turn on my sketch to make sure. But I think that overall's looking a little, I'm going to kind of redo this little bit of shading here. There we go. Now I have to redo that one. Okay, cool. I'm happy with that. Check with my sketch off, make sure I like it. And then I'm gonna move on. And we are gonna add some shading to the pots too. I just haven't gotten there yet, so no worries. Okay, sketch back on. Do we have any questions?
Someone was asking, if you do not save your palette, does it just disappear?
Like the colors, so you'll have this history thing, which they eventually fall off. Like you only get like your 10 most recent colors that you used. And you might not even have this. Like this is one, it's a Procreate 5 feature. So you have to have Procreate 5. 2, it doesn't work on, you won't see this if you have like a smaller iPad screen. So
And when
you might not see that. Yeah, we're just getting, I got it. Instagram timed out, but we got it back up now. So, okay. So last plant, we're going to move on to our like palm kind of plant. And I'm going to group all these together. I'm just going to go ahead and merge this one too. So I'm going to tap it and merge down. I'm just going to group them to kind of keep things organized. If you need to, you can merge those layers all together. In fact, a quick way to merge a bunch of layers is to select them all, put them into a group, and then tap it, and you can hit flatten. I'll just go ahead and do that. And that'll merge everything in a group all into one layer all at once. So if you have like 20 layers you need to merge, that's a really quick way to do it. Okay, so let's create a new layer for our new leaf plant. And for this one, I'm actually going to use the fat filler brush to fill in the color. So again, that's Authentic Markers, fat filler. Let's see what color we have right now. It's kind of too dark for me. So I'm going to take a lot of the black out, make it brighter, make my brush size bigger. That's pretty good. I'm going to make it a little cooler of a green. So I'll just use this slider here. It's a little darker, a little less, oops. If you accidentally mess up your color choice, you can tap and hold the little color picker thing here to recall the previous color that you had. Sometimes it does its own thing. That's pretty good. I like that green. So I'm going to make my brush size a little bigger, and I'm actually just going to color in over this whole area here. And this is we're just working on these 3 front leaves, palm fronds. So I could go in and like erase where, like we did before, but I'm going to show you how to do this using layer masks, which I think is like a feature that most people are just super confused about. It's one of the mask features, but it's like different. So I just use that one brush to kind of fill in this whole area, and then I'm gonna tap on that layer and hit mask. And this, you'll see a like white box will show up and it'll say layer mask. And this white basically dictates what is shown and what is not shown of this artwork on this layer, like on what we have, layer 10. So there's a little saying that I like to, there's a few different sayings to help you remember what works. If you see white here, white is like a window and it will show whatever is here. So right now, this whole thing is white and it's showing everything that I drew on this layer. But if I draw somewhere with black, so if I grab black and I'm on this layer, see how it's like a brighter blue? I've got the layer selected versus the like artwork selected. So if I draw with black somewhere, let me get a different brush so it's more obvious. Let's do the detail marker. Black blocks whatever is on that layer. So look, I haven't changed the artwork. It's still there, but black is blocking whatever I've drawn there. And the great thing about this is like if you accidentally like make this one too small, or you need to edit like what you've taken away. Like here we erased and now it's gone, like we can't ever get it back. But if we use a mask, we can. We just need to paint it back in with white. Okay. This is kind of a pain with this set due to the blend modes used in the brushes. You actually have to go to the flat markers to edit your masks, which they don't have any of that transparency. The transparency makes all these cool color effects, but it kind of messes up with masks. So I'm going to go to the flat markers to do all this like mask editing. I'm going to just use the flat detail marker for that. So again, I have this mask selected, and now I can just like, oops, I need black. I can just paint, white. See, like even I get a little confused sometimes. So white is a window that will show what you have there. I can paint this back in, and then you can use the eraser, or you can use black to like erase things away. See, This is what the eraser makes it go black. I have a better a better video about masks on my YouTube channel or on my website. It's just called like Procreate Deep Dive Masks. Jeff will put it. Just put it in there. There we go. So the benefit again of using a layer mask is that the shape that I'm now creating is editable. Like I can go back and like add more to it. I'm not actually erasing any of this color away. It's still there. I'm just masking it. These shapes are a little kind of irregular looking. There we go. Yeah, like just happened to work out this way. Like my shapes are kind of like a little like choppy looking around the edges. So I can go back with my paintbrush and the color white and kind of paint back in what I want. If it just turned out to be too, I don't know. It didn't look that great to me. They were just kind of like a little jagged. So that's the benefit of using a layer mask, is that you can, it always remains editable. You're not actually erasing and getting rid of anything. You're just masking and hiding parts of it or showing parts of it. There we go. Okay, I think somebody had a question. Jeff?
Someone's asking, why would you use a mask instead of a clipping mask?
Well, clipping mask is when you're like what we did with this stripe, to confine what we're drawing to a shape that was already defined. And this one, we're just kind of starting fresh with a new layer and then editing the shape. So the alternative to this, what I just did here, would just be erase. Like we did here, like I could have just erased and made this shape. But then if I change my mind, I can't go back and add more like I was doing, like where it looked kind of like jagged, and I kind of cleaned up by adding more back into it. I couldn't have done that if I just erased it, because then once I erased it, it's gone. Here, it's always there. Like I always have this, and in fact, if I turn off the mask, this is always there. And I'm just choosing to mask or hide parts of it. So it's always editable. I'm gonna do it one more time because we'll do these ones back here. So I'll create a new layer. I'm gonna go below everything that I've just done. And, oops, we're gonna get the brush we used before, which was Authentic Markers, Fat Filler. And I'll just kind of really quickly paint that in. And then I'm gonna tap the layer and choose Mask. And now I'm just editing what's being shown and what's not being shown. So if I grab my eraser, and again, it automatically should select the layer, like the mask layer, when you're creating a new mask. So just make sure that's selected. And then I can just, I'm masking this part, I'm hiding what I'm using the eraser to hide parts of this.
Someone's asking, does adding a clipping mask count as a new layer?
It sure does, and so does adding a mask. So that's what you got to decide, like, do I need to make it on a new layer? Do I not? Yeah, because it does add to your layer count. I mean, you have a lot more control over your shapes and stuff like that. Now I can go back and I can edit that mask still. So, okay. Let me know if you guys still have questions about the layer mask, because I know that was a little bit confusing. It's a little bit hard to explain, but I hope that helped a little bit, like to understanding what that is. So again, this was the second layer. If I turn off the mask, like this is always there, and that's just masking away what's shown. So, okay. Alrighty, so now we're gonna add some detail to these little palm fronds. I'm going to start with the layer that's in front, and I'm going to get a different brush. Let's do the detail marker for this. I'm just going to add like little lines, and I'm going to get a color that's like just a little bit darker, maybe a little cooler. I'll try that out. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So now I'm just going to add lines coming out. And if you notice, I didn't have to turn on alpha lock in this case because like I've already got the edges masked off. See, if I turn off the mask, that's what it actually looks like, but the mask is like creating all those edges. So I don't have to use alpha lock because I have that mask turned on. So there we go. We'll do this one. There. Some lines kind of coming out the bottom-ish area.
So I'm saying I'm using white to paint back a detail and it's not doing anything.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned. The authentic markers and the prismatic markers have like this transparency and blend modes built into them. So use something from the flat marker set if you're trying to paint the white back in. That it's probably not the best set to use to show you masks because it does have that limitation. Flat markers will be the way to go. So choose a brush from flat markers. There we go. Cool. Got that one done. I'm going to go to this layer, make sure we're not in the mask layer. We want to be on the actual artwork layer. And we'll do the same thing. There we go. Add one more there. And the last little leafy guy over here. Okay, so we've got all of our leaves have details now. I am gonna add a little bit of shading. So I'm gonna grab my fat filler brush. That's the one I've been using to do all my shading. I don't think I should have to change the color. There we go. So I'm just adding a little bit of shading to these. Again, I'm on this layer that's behind. To add just a little bit here. It's smaller. The more I kind of layer on strokes, the darker it'll get. So you can kind of decide like how dark you want it to get on that back layer. So that's what it looks like now. And so if you noticed, this kind of weirdness started to happen. And that is because the mask that I made didn't quite erase everything. Like there was some kind of residual, like this little area here, and it became more apparent as I made it darker. So I'm just gonna go into my mask, grab the eraser, and just get rid of all that. There we go. Same thing over here. I had some extra stuff over there.
So another really good question, is there a way to fill with the eraser in the same drag and drop way you can fill with color?
I've heard that question asked before.
Or would that be just using the selection tool?
Yeah, you would use the selection tool. There is an automatic selection tool, which I don't use that much, but you can select like an area of color and then you can clear it out. But no, it doesn't have that. Kind of a bummer. That'd be interesting to see how that works. Okay, so now we need to add some stems. So I just created a layer below all my like leaf layers or my palm frond layers. And I will use the detail marker to do that. Or did I use a fine? Maybe detail marker fine. I think either of those would be good. And we'll just add little stems. So there we go. So again, that was on a layer that was below these leaf layers. So we've got all three of our little plants all done and good to go. I'm gonna turn off my sketch. I'm definitely done with that. And then the last thing I wanna do is just add a little dimension to the pots with a bit of shading. So for that, I'm gonna go to the layer with the pots. I am going to turn on alpha lock. So again, that makes whatever we add to this confined to the shape that we've already drawn. So swipe to the right with 2 fingers or tap and see if alpha lock is checked there. And let's go ahead. I'm gonna grab a color. Let's see, I actually used one of my swatches for this, so I could probably grab the same color. And then I'm gonna use the fat filler brush. So, and then I'm just gonna make it a little bit bigger. Just add a little, and the more I layer strokes, so I'm like doing a new stroke every time, the darker it will get. So you can go as dark as you want on one side, maybe add a little bit to this side. Just add a little bit of dimension. We'll do the same with this. I'm gonna try and select just this color, just as like a starting point for my hue. So I'm getting the same hue, which means like red, orange, or yellow, or whatever, like the color. I'll add like a teeny bit of black to this. I'll probably take the saturation down. See if that'll work for me. I think that'll work. Kind of just have to experiment. And then we'll do a little bit on this side. I don't know. It's a little too red, actually. We'll go here. Maybe a little bit more black. There we go. That's a little better. A little bit on that side. And then we'll do this guy here, which I'll try the same thing. I'll kind of select a color in that range, and we'll just try it out and see. Yeah, that actually works pretty well. And then if I want to, I can add a highlight to this as well. And since I mentioned to you guys before, you can't, it always gets darker. If you want to add a lighter color on top, you have to put it on a new layer. So that's what I'll do, is I will just create a new layer right above the pots, and I will turn this one into a clipping mask. So it's confined to that same shape I've drawn on the layer below it. And I'm just gonna grab like a lighter color, get a little smaller with my brush. Maybe even lighter than that. Just add just a little bit of a highlight to one side there, like that. We'll do it here. Just gonna grab something close to reddish color. And then right here as well, I'll start with that teal. Just make it bright. Take all the blackness out of it. And there we go. Now we have like a nice little highlight on all of those. Okay, we're gonna add a quick background and maybe like a little shadow at the bottom, and then we'll be all done with this. So merge layers if you need to. If you've run out of layers, we're gonna probably create 1 or 2 more layers.
Someone earlier was saying, hey, I merged my layers and something disappeared.
That's a tricky one. I've seen that happen before, but I don't know exactly what causes it. Yeah, I'd have to like look at your piece, I think, unfortunately. Try and unmerge them and merge them again. I'm sorry, I don't have a good answer for that. I've seen that happen before, and I forget exactly what causes it. Okay, so we're gonna create a layer below everything else, right above the background layer. I'm gonna make like a neutral kind of background. So I'm gonna choose, it might be easier to go over to the disc for this. I'm gonna go some like in the orange range, something really light, like right there. So that's the color I'm gonna try. I'm just picking a color, and then I'm gonna try it, and then I can adjust it afterwards. So I'm gonna use the fat filler for this. I'm gonna make it real big, and I'm just gonna go, let me make it even bigger. I'm just gonna go over the whole thing like this. And that color's pretty good. I'm gonna make it a little less saturated. So I'm gonna go back over to value and just take some of the saturation out, just a little bit. Even fine little adjustments to your colors will make a difference. And the more I keep going with strokes, the more darker it'll get. But I kind of like that. It's a nice neutral color. And then I'll just erase some of it. I want to make like white circles behind each of these. So I'll grab my eraser. We can use the Bardot marker for the eraser this time. Maybe a little bit bigger. And I'm just gonna like, trying to draw some ovals behind, or technically I'm erasing some ovals. You could also make a new layer and like draw them in white, but either way would work. So there's one. There's two. Make that one a little bit bigger. And one more. So because I'm using the eraser to just erase away parts of my background, I can't really go back and like, if I like made a shape I didn't like and I wanted to like erase some of the white shape away, I can't do it because I just erased part of my background. So that would be the argument for creating a new layer and just painting these shapes in white, and then you can like edit away. But of course that takes up another layer. So that's kind of like the same concept as like, do I do a clipping mask or do I do a layer mask? You know, you have more editing capabilities when things are on their own layers. There's always undo, but it only gets you so far. So just kind of, I'm gonna make it work for these. Okay, cool. I think that's pretty good. We got little circles there. And then I'm just gonna add a little bit of a drop shadow under each one. So I'm gonna create another layer for that. And I'm gonna take all the saturation out of that color. So I just have like a really kind of light gray that I'm choosing. So that's the color that I have for that, just a really, really light gray. And we'll use the Bardot marker to do these little shadows. I've got it on a pretty small brush size. And I'll just kind of draw some lines back and forth like that. And the more I layer, I want to layer them a lot, like right underneath the pot, because right where the object hits a surface, there's going to be a really dark shadow, and then like some lighter shadows like surrounding that. And I'm actually going to set this blend mode of this layer to multiply. So if I tap in and hit and go to multiply, that'll make sure like it's dark where it overlaps the, you know, the like darker background color. So there's that. And then we'll do this guy here. So we'll kind of start with, I'm doing very light strokes, especially like as I go further down. And then I can layer some really dark strokes right underneath that. Yeah, I like that. There we go. And then we'll do the last one. Make the brush size a little bigger. And then a little smaller as we try and fill in that little area. There we go. Blend that a little bit more. Cool. So we've got some nice little shadows going on underneath. And that is it for this drawing. So we've done 3 plants, a little trio of plants. I've shown you some stuff about masks. I hope it helped a little bit. I know masks can be very confusing. I would recommend checking out my mask tutorial, which probably explains it a little more succinctly than I did today. And there's like a cool example where, fittingly enough, we're drawing a different plant that you can follow along and like learn a little bit more about masks. But I would love to take a few questions if you guys have any questions. So go ahead and type those in. The other thing I wanted, to show you is if you are sharing your artwork, I would love to see what you've made. So feel free to tag me. You can do hashtag Bardot Brush. You can tag Bardot Brush. You can tag me, Lisa Bardot. But that's really thrilling for me to see what you guys have created from this. Maybe you'll go and make your own favorite plant drawing. Like if you have a house plant that you really love, I would love to see what you guys create. So, yeah, I can take a few questions if we have some.
Someone was asking, where would I go to print this if I wanted to make a card out of this?
Oh, well, there are a lot of vendors that can print things for you. If you have a home printer, of course, you can try printing things at home. But I like to outsource anything that I print. And one of the vendors that I've used for many years is called Cat Print, like CAT, Cat Print. And you can order like any quantity of item, which is really like any size, any quantity, and it's really customizable. So I've been using them for years. I used to actually be a wedding stationery designer, and so I've done lots and lots of printing, and I always use them. They're really awesome. So, but yeah, I mean, it depends on the purpose of if you just want to print a card to one person to give to one person, maybe print it at home. If you want to print some to sell, I would definitely look into outsourcing your printing and do it in bulk so you can save some money.
And how do I change the color space for print?
You can't. Once you set up your file, you can't change the color profile of it. And I honestly just work in the RGB color profile. And I just know that when it prints, it's not going to be as bright and saturated. And even when you do set your color profile to CMYK, I don't feel like that's even an accurate representation of how it's going to print. It seems even more dull than when it prints. So, if color is really important with you, I would just do some test prints and see. But just know that like if you're working in the RGB, which is like the default. So if you just open up a new file in Procreate, that's what it's default set to. Like this is set to. The colors, especially like bright colors, like, these bright oranges and greens and things like that are just going to look a little more dull when you print them out. So.
Someone was asking, do the brushes all come pressure sensitive?
For the most part, yes. I design my brushes for the most part to like utilize the Apple Pencil features like pressure and tilt and things like that. Sometimes they aren't pressure sensitive, and that's usually for a specific reason. Like if I am making like a mono width brush, which you want to be the same width no matter how hard you draw, then that wouldn't be pressure sensitive. So it just kind of depends on the brush, but usually yes, they are. Another question? Drink some water.
What do you recommend if you want to print a book? Someone was asking. So it looks like we're getting a lot of printing.
I would figure out the So with any printing, you want to figure out the specifications from your printer, like as far as size and resolution and things like that. Like having your piece, like at the physical size it's going to be printed. So if it was like an 8x8, you'd want it to be at 300 DPI. That's kind of like the industry standard for, having resolution. You can go a little bit less resolution and it'll still look okay. But any higher than that, you don't really need. So my advice is check with your printer, and they even have like color profiles for their printers that you can use and pop into Procreate. You can import a color profile into Procreate so you can get it to be exactly what they want you to do. So always check with your print vendor, especially when you're doing like a big project, like a book or something like that.
Someone was asking what 2 or 3 brush sets would you buy if I was to only buy 2 or 3?
Good question. Let me pull up my webpage really quick. Gouache paint box is probably one of my favorites. And I think it's a really versatile set that you can do a lot with. I have all my sets here under shop brushes. That's like definitely a favorite of mine, and it's a favorite in general. Like people really like it. So I would do that one. I think that the magic paper is really unique and really fun, and you can use any brush with it, and it just makes your art look like, have these really cool like photorealistic textures. So that's a really cool one. That's, I think, pretty unique. That doesn't really exist much elsewhere. And then one more. It's hard to pick. I don't know. That's a tricky one. I know a lot of people really love the Mid-Century Illustrators kit. It's got some cool textured brushes in it. Once you get the hang of the multi-tonal markers, like that is actually one of my favorite brush sets for what it can create, because it's so unique looking, I think, to anything else out there. Like I've never seen like just a brush that can make this look like this easily. Once you get past the learning curve of like picking colors and stuff like that, like that's another really, really cool set that's really unique. So I think when I create brushes, I'm trying to create something that is very unique and doesn't really exist out there yet. So that's why I make the brushes, because I'm like, I want it to do this, or this is like really exciting, this like thing that it can do. So yeah, those are probably some of my favorites. Another question?
Someone's asking, is an iPad mini okay for using Procreate? So we've had a lot of people just asking, in general, which iPad to get. iPad
mini was my first iPad that I used with Procreate. My recommendations when you're picking an iPad, really is like, get one that can work with the Apple Pencil. Like I think the Apple Pencil is like a must-have accessory. Like you can do, you can draw with your fingers, you can draw with a third-party stylus, but nothing really compares to like the natural feel that you get from using the Apple Pencil. So just check that your pencil or that your iPad will work with an Apple Pencil, and I highly recommend investing in this one accessory. Like when the Apple Pencil came out, it came out the same time as a new iPad Pro, and like, you had to get the iPad to work with the Apple Pencil. But I was more excited about the Apple Pencil than getting like a new iPad. And like I still like think this is the best. So yeah, I highly recommend checking. And you can search for Apple Pencil compatibility in Google, and you'll get an article from Apple that will tell you which models are compatible with Apple Pencil. So yeah, but get something that works within your budget. And, iPad mini is great. I think the newer ones do work with the Apple Pencil, but double check. Another question?
I
think we're good?
I think we're pretty good, yeah.
All right. Well, then we will go ahead and wrap things up, you guys. Again, please share and tag me so I can check out what cool stuff you made. I always love once these videos end and all your artwork starts popping up in like Instagram and like in our Facebook group and stuff, I love seeing it. It's so fun. I'm like, you guys are just so awesome. And I love seeing what you guys make. Kind of did Q&A. I just wanted to quickly mention about the Making Art Every Day project, which is something that I run, which is daily drawing prompts, motivational emails. We've got a really great community kind of based around this now. To help you establish a daily art making practice. Because if you want to get better at it, the best way to do that is to draw a lot and practice and practice and practice. So the idea is just to draw something every day. And we always have a theme every month. This month theme, we just started this week, a new theme, which is objects. We're doing like inanimate objects, but we have this plus element where you can it's kind of like an extra little challenge if you want. So we're doing objects plus decades. So we're kind of doing like these themes every week where we're exploring objects from particular decades. So this week we're doing the 50s, and we have all these kind of like 50s kind of objects. And then we're going to move forward in time as the month progresses. So I definitely recommend checking out Making Art Every Day. It's all free. And it's a great way to get that daily practice going for yourself. So again, I am Lisa Bardot. I own Bardot Brush. I make awesome brushes for Procreate and educational content to help you learn how to draw, such as what you've watched today. So it's really fun. We will be back again on Friday with a new Stay home and draw live tutorial. I hope you guys will join us then. It'll be at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. We always try and do them at the same time every time we do them. So I hope you can join us then and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.